Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia and welcome back to episode 7 of Let's Talk Lore 8 Princes series. Last episode, we witnessed the end of Emperor Sima Lun and the rise of Sima Jiong, who did not learn from history as he retraced in Sima Lun's footsteps. Now with rumors of Sima Ai aiding the regional kings as the inside men spreading in the capital, Sima Jiong orders for the head of Sima Ai. With only around 100 personal guards, Sima Ai's fate seems sealed as another sacrificial pawn in this ongoing Game of Thrones. But we would not be having today's episode if Sima Ai simply submitted to his fate. Instead, upon hearing that Sima Jiong had issued for his head, Sima Ai stood his ground and pulled off one of the most stunning underdog stories in history. Let's dive into this story now. With only 100 men, Sima Ai knew he needed to get help. But no one in the capital was going to be willing to help him against the powerful regent and prime minister Sima Jiong. So he and his men raced down the streets of the capital, with Sima Ai leading the way in a horse-drawn carriage with the coach cut open to look like a chariot. They were not running away from the capital, but instead they were charging for the gates of the imperial palace. Unlike Sima Chong's failed armed coup against Sima Lun with his 700 skilled Huainan swordsmen, Sima Ai and his 100 men got inside the palace before the imperial guards knew what was happening, as Sima Jiong had chosen to rule out of his mini palace on the other side of town. Once inside, Sima Ai took Emperor Sima Zhong hostage and used the emperor to gain control of the imperial guard and ordered to shut all the gates of the imperial palace down. Then, for the next 2 days, the two sides of Sima Ai and Sima Jiong battled it out on the streets of the capital. Even with the imperial guards, Sima Ai's forces was dwarfed by that of Sima Jiong's guards and army. So Sima Ai spread his men out to start fires throughout key points in the capital to spread Sima Jiong's men out thin, and focus his main force to attack Sima Jiong himself. Sima Jiong commanded his men to steal the commanding banners from the palace in an attempt to regain control of the imperial guards. While the imperial guards are taught to respect the commanding banners as if it was the command from the emperor himself, Sima Ai kept Emperor Sima Zhong by his side at all times, and there was nothing Sima Jiong could say to convince the imperial guards that the emperor was asking them to stand down when arrows are literally being fired at the emperor by Sima Jiong's men. The 2-day affair was as much as a brawl as a shouting match between Sima Ai and Sima Jiong, as both sides claimed that they had the support of the emperor and that the other one was the true rebel. City guards and imperial guards swayed between the two, but at the end, by having emperor by his side, Sima Ai won and captured Sima Jiong, despite starting with an 1,000 to 1 odd. With Sima Jiong captured, Sima Ai felt he didn't have enough men loyal to him in the capital to keep Sima Jiong alive, as he risked facing another coup from men loyal to Sima Jiong. So he promptly had Sima Jiong and many of his loyalists executed to gain firm control of the capital, and 2,000 more heads rolled after the 2-day brawl throughout the capital. Unlike all the others before him, Sima Ai, who now had control of the capital, did not name himself as regent or take on any high government roles. Instead, he dutifully served the Emperor Sima Zhong and apologized for taking him hostage as the situation demanded it. And he swore to take care of the people of the capital and deferred the regent role to his younger brother Sima Ying, who now resides in Ye. Sima Ai had a lot of respect for Sima Ying. After Sima Ying was able to defer the region role himself to Sima Jiong following their campaign together against Sima Lun, Sima Ai knew he did not have the influence or power of Sima Ying, who, as we have stated before, with his army of over 200,000 men, was the strongest regional king. One time, when the two were paying their respects at the grave of their father and late Emperor Sima Yan, Sima Ai had once said to Sima Ying, "This kingdom was hard-earned by our ancestors. Please take good care of it." So we knew Sima Ai completely trusted in Sima Ying. Life returned to normal in the capital for the time being, and the history books did not record anything about Sima Ai's time governing the capital, which goes to show you that he did not do anything extra or out of place, like the many princes before him who had gained control of the capital. From Sima Wei trying to become popular after deposing the prior regents, to Sima Lun dabbling in the superstitious and naming himself emperor, to Sima Jiong, who had chose to build himself a miniature palace that rivaled the emperor. Sima Ai did none of these things, and instead deferred the regency to his younger brother, Sima Ying, whose ego now has ballooned as he felt like he was now the new de facto ruler of the kingdom. With Emperor Sima Zhong now without a son, the idea of becoming emperor must have crept up in Sima Ying's mind. Meanwhile, to the west, we have long forgotten about the prince who had started all this, with He Jianwang Sima Yong. Sima Yong had originally hoped that his rumors would have been the death of Sima Ai, which he had planned to use as an excuse for him to march against Sima Jiong. Shockingly, it was the end of Sima Jiong himself, and now Sima Ai is heralded as the hero of the kingdom and has firm control over the capital, and proves himself to be a dutiful and capable governor. And Sima Jiong is now once again without an excuse to march on the capital to become regent himself. His general Li Han, who came up with the first plan to spread rumors to kill Sima Ai, now offered his services as an assassin to kill Sima Ai himself. Sima Yong happily agrees to the plan, but Li Han's assassination attempt on Sima Ai fails and was instead killed himself. Enraged, Sima Yong decides to use the death of Li Han as an excuse to march on the capital with his 70,000 men against the less than 50,000 central government forces that now garrison the capital. Well, this looks like a fair fight. What happens next will break Sima Ai's heart. Sima Ying, the younger brother that Sima Ai thought could one day restore the Jin, decided to join the treacherous Sima Yong, because not only did he not want Sima Yong to become regent, but he also no longer wanted Sima Ai to govern the capital, because Sima Ai has proven so capable that Sima Ying feared that once Sima Zhong dies, those in the capital might ask Sima Ai, who is older than him and thus has more claim to the throne, could become the next emperor instead, even though Sima Ai has given every intention of passing it to Sima Ying. It is also recorded in history that, like Sima Yong, Sima Ying also sent assassins to end Sima Ai's life, but like Li Han, they also failed and were killed instead. It was just fortunate that Sima Ai never linked them back to Sima Ying. So this time, instead of assassins, Sima Ying is coming with his army of over 200,000 men to end Sima Ai once and for all. So now, all of a sudden, Sima Ai is once again faced against impossible odds. With only a small central government army left at his disposal, he was faced with a war on two fronts. To the west, Sima Yong's army of 70,000 strong, led by the fierce general Zhang Fang. To the northeast is Sima Ying's 200,000 army, led by General Lu Ji. We should pause here to talk about Lu Ji for a second, as he is the grandson of the famous Wu general Lu Xun. Lu Xun was the famed military commander for the kingdom of Wu that was responsible for the death of the god of war Guan Yu and the defeat of Liu Bei's forces in the aftermath of Guan Yu's death. Following the demise of the kingdom of Wu, people like Lu Ji, who comes from powerful southern clans, have been hoping to make a name for themselves, and his opportunity finally arrived once he joined forces with Sima Ying. As we already knew, Sima Ying had made quite a name for himself while garrisoned in the ancient capital city of Ye in the north. His fame not only attracted himself a large army, but also a lot of famed advisors from powerful clans like Lu Zhi, who we already discussed in the last episode was the great-grandson of the famous Lu Zhi. And now, Lu Ji, who is the grandson of the famed Lu Xun, have also joined his side. When deciding who will lead his army to put an end to Sima Ai, Sima Ying had many generals clamor for the chance to be the one to bring their regional king the capital city and the head of Sima Ai. They also all believed that this campaign was a foregone conclusion, as they themselves outnumbers Sima Ai more than 5-1. And with Sima Yong attacking from the rear as an insurance policy, everyone wanted the chance to make a name for themselves with this victory. The person that Sima Ying ultimately picked at the end was Lu Ji, because as he was garrisoned in the northern commandery of Ye, he wanted to win the hearts of the south by promoting one of their own to help set himself up as a future emperor for the whole kingdom one day. However, this decision annoyed many of his other generals who were all northerners who had been with Sima Ying from the start, but they nevertheless went along with their king's command. So now we have two massive armies approaching the capital. But this time, unlike the campaign against Sima Lun, there were no more regional forces standing in between them and the capital. The only central government forces left were those that are stationed in the capital itself, and Sima Ai had to devise a plan quickly. First, he handed over a small force to General Huang Fushang, who was tasked to encamp the force slightly west of the capital to delay Sima Yong's advance and to prevent a siege on the capital itself. He needed them to buy him time, and he did not wish to see the people of the capital suffer from a drawn-out siege. So he took the remaining army of maybe 30,000 men and rode out outside of the gates of Luoyang to face off with the 200,000 men of Sima Ying's force led by Lu Ji. In this fight, Lu Ji utilizes a strategy often used by his grandfather Lu Xun when commanding a superior force, and spread the armies of Sima Ying evenly out over a long stretch with gaps in between each individual army group. This formation allowed them to fully utilize their superior force and also allows each individual general more control over their own unit in the chaos of the battle. The plan given to all the generals was that they would march slowly towards Sima Ai's small force and surround him from all three sides as they annihilate his forces outside the city of Luoyang. However, from the onset of the battle, this plan went awry as General Meng Chao, who was a northern general that was unhappy with Lu Ji's appointment, charged his army group way ahead of the formation and engaged Sima Ai's forces head-on. Although Sima Ai had a small force, they were the best trained central government forces tasked with defending the capital, so they fought bravely and decimated the overconfident forces of Meng Chao. This small win helped bolster the morale of Sima Ai's men and forced Lu Ji to rush his men forward in an attempt to quickly pincer Sima Ai's forces by surrounding them from all sides. Seeing that the enemy is attempting to flank them, Sima Ai ordered all his cavalry units to charge out straight into the middle of the enemy formation. This offensive attack shocked Sima Ying's men. The center of the formation was held down by a general named Ma Xian, who was one of Sima Ying's best generals. But the swiftness and audacity of a countercharge by Sima Ai's men caught him by complete surprise, and he was killed right away in the initial charge, and his men shattered. The rout of Ma Xian's central forces caused a massive chain rout from all of Sima Ying's forces towards the river behind them, where many of them would drown. Sima Ai then seized the situation and did not wish to settle for a simple victory, as he knew he was still vastly outnumbered. So he then ordered his spearmen into a spear wall formation as they redirected the eastern enemy forces back towards the river, where many more were killed. Lu Ji was then forced to retreat across the Yellow River before he could stabilize his routing army and regroup. At the end of the fight, Sima Ai's forces had killed over 70,000 men and won a resounding victory. In the months that followed, however, the capital city Luoyang was put into a 5-month-long siege. Even with food supplies dwindling, the city held strong, and the central government forces firmly believed in Sima Ai's command, as Sima Ai had rode out many times to beat back the siege, only to see Sima Ying and Sima Yong resume siege after regrouping. As the siege continued into the 5th month in the January of the year 304, some court officials begun to think that Sima Ai's resistance is hopeless and that surrendering is the only solution. Leading this school of thought was Donghai Wang Sima Yue. Donghai Wang Sima Yue is the last of our 8 princes, and this is the first time we're talking about him in our story, but this is definitely not the first time he has appeared. First, if we look at his family tree shown here, we can see that he is the grandson of Sima Yi's 4th younger brother, Sima Kui. So in reality, his branch of the family tree is very similar to that of Hejian Wang Sima Yong, as they are both second cousins once removed to the emperor. But for simplicity's sake, let's just stick to calling him the emperor's uncle. Sima Yue have always been in the capital and even assisted Empress Jia in disposing the then regent Yang Jun way back at the beginning of our story. It was this role that eventually earned him the kingship to begin with, as he was given the title of Donghai Wang from Empress Jia as a thank you for helping against Yang Jun. After receiving his title, Sima Yue remained in the capital throughout Empress Jia, Sima Lun, and Sima Zhong's rules as a silent bystander at court. Now, with food supplies nearing an end in the capital, Sima Yue finally took action as he and his men had Sima Ai imprisoned as he pleaded with the emperor to allow him to lead negotiations for peace with Sima Ying and Sima Yong. In the negotiation that followed, it turns out that both Sima Ying and Sima Yong's forces were equally depleted and were running out of food themselves. Sima Yong's leading general, Zhang Fang, even slaughtered over 10,000 slave laborers in the winter as substance to feed his troops. As Sima Yue's negotiation team discovered that the enemy were also nearing defeat, many argued for the release of Sima Ai, as he is the one capable of leading the central government forces to repel the enemy once and for all. While everyone celebrated what looked like the end of the siege, Sima Yue was gravely concerned about his own well-being, as it was he who had called for the imprisonment of Sima Ai and the peace negotiations in the first place. Releasing Sima Ai would certainly mean his death. So he contacted Zhang Fang's men in secret and smuggled them into the capital at night and had them bring the imprisoned Sima Ai back to Zhang Fang's camp, where Zhang Fang ordered him to be burned alive. So with victory in sight, the 28-year-old Sima Ai was stabbed in the back by Sima Yue and burned alive by the cruel general Zhang Fang. With Sima Ai now dead, the central government forces surrenders, and Sima Ying and Sima Yong once again enters the capital as victors. With Sima Ying not only being the stronger regional king, but also more closely related to the emperor, Sima Yong was forced to recommend Sima Ying to become the crown prince brother himself and the regent to the throne. Sima Ying gladly accepts and is now one step away from becoming emperor himself. But he makes the most bizarre and boneheaded political move there is by declaring that he will instead return to his garrison in Ye and rule in a dual capital structure. The reasons for his desire to remain in Ye is because 1. His birth mother had fallen in love with the city and desired to live out her days there, and 2. because his nanchong, or male lover, Meng Jiu, who was the brother to the rash general Meng Chao who had charged as Sima Ai early on in the battle and died, is also from the city of Ye. And lastly, Sima Ying had grown comfortable in his palace in Ye, where he had already been playing the role of regent when Sima Ai deferred the position to him in the first place. So in Sima Ying's mind, he felt safe ignoring the idiot emperor Sima Zhong and instead wished to just live out his days acting as an emperor in his city of Ye. So Sima Ying marched back to Ye, Sima Yong marched back to Guanzhong, and all of a sudden, the power vacuum in the capital was taken over by none other than Donghai Wang Sima Yue, who no one had previously believed to be a threat, given his role as a silent bystander in the turmoils of the past. But this time, Sima Yue was convinced that his time had come and started planning his path toward becoming the emperor. To find out more about the plan Sima Yue is cooking up and the conclusion of our 8 Princes saga, come back tomorrow as we wrap up this series as the 3 remaining 8 princes battled it out until only one remained standing. This concludes episode 7 of the 8 Princes edition of Let's Talk Lore. Once again, hope you guys enjoy the video, and if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to support the channel and to get notifications when new videos are released. Thank you again for watching, and see you all next time for our grand conclusion. Bye!